Story 1. This is a somewhat long story that happened several years ago. I recently mentioned these events in passing to a friend, which brought it all back to mind. When I 38 and non-binary was in my early 30s, I worked in the office of an apartment complex catering to university students. The front office had an absurdly high turnover rate, to the point where, for over half of my 4 years there, I was the only full-time staff member handling front desk responsibilities. Eventually, management hired a new full-time employee, whom I'll call E. E was a few years younger than me, multilingual, had a degree in hospitality and sales, and had recently moved to the state. On paper, she seemed like a great addition to the team. Before I get into the details, there are two things about me that are relevant to this story. First, I had recently lost my mom, and second, I am overweight. My job required a lot of physical effort, like lifting and carrying heavy packages up the long, steep hill where our apartment complex was located. Because of that, I'm fairly muscular and quite fit beneath my extra weight, something I take pride in. By contrast, my mom never weighed more than 110 pounds in her entire life. While she meant well, her constant comments about my weight over the years left me sensitive about the topic. At first, everything with E went smoothly, but after a while, she became fixated on healthy eating. One day, I casually mentioned a restaurant I liked, and she immediately pulled up their menu to suggest what I should order, adding a comment about being my mom now. I politely shut her down and explained my recent loss, hoping it would curb that kind of talk. Instead, she began bringing meals for me, and when I didn't want them, she acted offended. She noticed me drinking soda and outright told me not to do that anymore, not recommended, but told. Another time, I was eating a snack at my desk when she walked over with a bag of trail mix. I could see what was about to happen as if in slow motion. Before I could stop her, she dumped the entire bag onto my plate. I don't like nuts, so the snack I'd been looking forward to went straight into the trash. I repeatedly told her to stop this behavior. She apologized but never actually changed. Eventually, I involved management, but they dismissed my concerns, saying she was just being friendly. This went on for at least 6 months, with no resolution in sight. The breaking point came during an interaction she had with a resident. I don't recall exactly what led to it, but she was chatting with the resident, glanced at me, and cheerfully announced, "I'm teaching her to be healthy. I'm like her mom." It was as though everything inside me snapped at once. Normally, I would have waited for the resident to leave and addressed the issue privately and calmly, but this time I couldn't hold back. Her comment wasn't even directed at me, it was said about me to someone else. That made it feel like the final straw in a long list of oversteps. I pushed back from my desk and firmly said something along the lines of, "I had a mom. She's gone now, and you're not her. Stop acting like it." The atmosphere in the office changed immediately. E stopped speaking to me entirely after that incident, and not long after, she quit. While I do feel a little bad about how things played out, my sympathy only goes so far. Management, however, didn't see things the same way. They accused me of creating a hostile work environment, which left me feeling isolated and unwelcome. It wasn't long before I decided to leave as well. Looking back, quitting that job was one of the best decisions I've ever made. I'm much happier where I am now. Story 2. I have had a pounding headache since yesterday. My neighbor suggested that writing might help since it can be surprisingly therapeutic. I thought I was done with my family for good. I told them to leave me alone and not come back. For a few weeks, I didn't hear from them. Then, like magic, they reappeared more messed up than ever. I've been working a 6-day stretch, but it was worth it since I'm leaving for vacation on Tuesday. I had some extra time off last week and used it to prepare for both the trip and the upcoming fall season. Normally, if any of my family members visit, it's just my sister or my mom. Yesterday, though, all 3 of them showed up on my doorstep. It was an absolute nightmare and ruined my day. They didn't even come empty-handed. They had paperwork with them. Before they were fully inside, my sister started with, "From your last email, I just need to clear this up. You are not allowed to hate me. I'm your older sister. My response was, yes, I can. You don't control my feelings or emotions. I wasn't exactly welcoming. I didn't offer them anything to drink or suggest they make themselves comfortable. Instead, I asked outright, "Why are you here?" My sister replied that she needed my help and that I was going to help her. She didn't ask, she just demanded it. My dad jumped in and said, "Your sister has been doing some thinking and research, and she has decided what she wants to do with her life and career." I glanced at my mom, who was rubbing her temples like she couldn't believe what was happening. She seemed to be the only one with a shred of common sense and had clearly just tagged along for the ride. I took a moment before responding. "I thought you were planning to get your real estate license?" "That's my last resort," my sister replied. "But I've been watching videos and blogs about healthcare careers. I saw one nurse, and it got me thinking. Nursing looks easy. Then I saw another vlogger who is a doctor, and now I think I want to become a doctor. Then I'll be your boss." At this point, I imagined Brenda Strong from Desperate Housewives narrating in my head. It was precisely at this moment that they realized the one thing their parents' money could never buy was common sense. This conversation was about to become both infuriating and slightly amusing. Yes, I'm a big fan of Desperate Housewives. It's not really my generation, but I stumbled upon it, bought the whole series, and loved it. Suddenly, I received a text message from one of my mom's phones, which I had forgotten to block. It read, "I'm trying, but your dad is making it really hard. Go for it." So, I decided to speak up. "Well, even if you manage to get through medical school and become a doctor, you'd never be my boss. That's not how it works. What exactly do you think I'm going to help you with?" My sister placed a folder on the table and showed me its contents: college applications. "You want to enter one of the most challenging professions in the world, medicine, and you need my help with college applications. If you think it's all so easy, you should be able to handle this without any assistance. Do you even understand what becoming a doctor entails?" Inside the folder was a copy of her high school transcripts. For a moment, I thought she might be serious since she'd done some research. I reviewed the transcripts and couldn't help but laugh. "See these?" I asked, holding up the paper. "Grades like these C's and D's will never get accepted. You'll have to start over completely. That means enrolling in community college, earning an associate degree heavy in math and science, and then applying to a university's pre-medical program. That alone will take you 2 or 3 years. After that, pre-med takes 4 years. Then you take the medical college admission test, which you need to pass with a very high score. Next comes medical school, which is another 4 years. Along the way, there are United States medical licensing examinations and residencies to complete. In total, you're looking at 11 or more years of education and training." I paused, took a deep breath, and leaned back in my chair before continuing. "If I want it badly enough, like everything else I've wanted, I'll get it," my sister said confidently. "This isn't like shopping for a new purse or getting your nails done," I replied sharply. "Here's something else you need to know. Your instructors won't care about you personally. Their job is to train you to become a doctor. They don't care if you've planned a vacation or booked a hair appointment. If you don't show up, you fail. And if you try to run back to mom and dad to fix a bad grade, it'll only make your professors dislike you even more. They'll see you as entitled and will work even harder to make sure you fail." It was at this moment that my dad, who had been relatively quiet until now, really got under my skin with his comment, "What's wrong? Afraid of a little sibling rivalry?" I don't know why, but that question made me snap. It should have been funny, but it had the opposite effect. "What sibling rivalry?" I retorted. "There is no rivalry because there's no competition. Do you know why? Because I've already done it. I've achieved everything while she's done nothing. You raised her while outsourcing me to a nanny, and honestly, I got the better end of the deal. The nanny was a better parent than you ever were. I went to school and got straight A's. I got a job as soon as I could, because I knew you were going to cut me off the moment I turned 18. I've been working hard for 8 years, while she hasn't worked a single day in her life, and now she's going to waltz in and become a doctor." I gestured toward the vacuum cleaner sitting in the middle of the living room floor. Do you even know what that is? Do you know what it does? Here's the thing, you can't even handle basic responsibilities, and now you expect me to help you with this harebrained plan? Absolutely not. I won't lift a finger to help with any of it, including your college applications. I was on a roll and couldn't seem to stop. Normally, I can keep myself composed, but the combination of her dismissive comment about nursing being easy and her claim that she would become my boss pushed me over the edge. Years of frustration came pouring out in that moment. 23 years of being treated like an afterthought by my parents. Growing up, I was just an issue that had to be dealt with. They've never acknowledged any fault in how they raised us, and nothing I said was going to change that. Finally, I took a deep breath and told all three of them that they needed to leave. I'm leaving for vacation on Tuesday, and you've already wasted too much of my time. I have a lot to do, so it's time for you to go. After they left, I sat down and reflected on everything that had happened. It's been weighing on me ever since, and I just needed to get it out. I apologize for the long rant, but this has been keeping me awake, and I don't want it to ruin my vacation. I know I might get some criticism for how I handled things, but that's fine. At least it's off my chest now. Story 3. My partner and I have been together for 5 years now. During that time, we've broken up twice, both times due to my family, and the way their behavior strained our relationship and affected his mental health. Recently, he's been dropping hints that he's planning to propose soon. He's been asking about my preferences for gemstones, my ring size, and mentioning how his next big purchase will be the biggest investment of his life, but he says I'm worth it. I know he's my person, and I want to spend my life with him. However, I'm unsure what to do about my family. I met him when we were both 20, and even thinking back to that time fills me with emotion. Growing up, I often felt like an outcast within my own family. I constantly had to work for their approval, and it seemed like nothing I did was ever good enough. When I was younger, I even made up stories about winning awards just to hear them say something nice about me or share something positive about me with others. Instead, they'd usually point out my flaws, saying things like, "She dropped the good plates, she's so clumsy," or comparing me unfavorably to others, saying, "I wish she were as good at sports as your daughter. She's just useless, haha." Hearing such comments from the age of 4 all the way into my mid-20s took a toll on me. My family seemed to feel entitled to everything I earned and to every decision I made. While having supportive friends helped me cope, it wasn't until I met my partner that I felt truly seen and loved. He cherished the very things I'd been told were wrong with me. He was curious about me, asked meaningful questions, and made me feel beautiful, a significant gesture, given how insecure I'd always felt compared to my family and friends. For the first time, I felt like a complete person, not just a role to fill. When I introduced him to my family, they weren't happy. Their disapproval wasn't rooted in anything specific, they just didn't like that I was in a relationship, and that some of my attention was no longer focused on them. Even though I explained how happy he made me, they told me my relationship made them unhappy. Back then, I feared their reactions deeply because, throughout my life, they taught me that respect and fear were synonymous. Over time, I've worked hard to overcome that mindset and to stand on my own 2 feet. When my partner and I broke up, instead of acknowledging that their interference had caused problems in our relationship and affected his mental health, they doubled down on their judgment. They painted him as someone who had hurt me and used it as proof that they were right about him all along. Despite all this, my partner and I have worked through our challenges and built a strong, supportive partnership. We've reached a place where we both feel confident that our love is enduring, corny as it may sound, and we're ready to settle down and start a family together. I dream of starting my life with him now. I want to marry him, live with him, and share all the everyday moments, coming home to each other, relaxing with a glass of wine and a favorite show, paying bills, doing laundry, and taking long walks. To me, he's my forever person. Apologies for the cheesiness, aha. But there's a small obstacle. For financial reasons, we're both still living with our families. He recently graduated and is studying to become a doctor, and I'm still a student as well. On top of that, my elderly and ill grandmother lives with us, and I worry about the strain my decisions might place on her. My mother, a single parent, is raising my 5 younger siblings, and her siblings, my aunts and uncles, have been incredibly judgmental about my relationship over the past year. While I'm welcome at my partner's home and his family is kind to me, he's not welcome in mine. It breaks my heart that, no matter how many times I try to discuss this with my family, they refuse to budge. Instead of acknowledging their role in our past breakups, they prefer to bring them up as evidence that my partner isn't right for me. They don't see how their hostility contributed to those difficult times. I don't want to hurt my family because I truly love them, but I also want to be happy with my partner. I don't want them to think of me the same way they see my father, who abandoned us. I know my decisions will upset them, and I can live with that, but I'm afraid it might mean having to cut ties with them if they refuse to accept my relationship. That thought fills me with anxiety because we've been through so much together as a family. However, it's clear that my mother and her siblings feel entitled to control every aspect of my life, especially my decisions, simply because they raised me. Now that I'm in my mid-20s, I still feel as if they treat me like the 16-year-old version of myself. The guilt weighs heavily on me. I'm so happy with my partner, yet my happiness seems to anger my family. I can't wrap my head around why that is. When I picture my future, he's the one I see. He's the one I choose. I can't understand why my family refuses to accept that it's simply the natural progression of life. I feel torn between two worlds. On one hand, I want to honor my family and maintain the bond we've shared. On the other, I want to build a life with the person who makes me feel valued and complete. Every time I try to make sense of their behavior, I come up short. Their unwillingness to support me, even when they see how much love and happiness my partner brings into my life, is something I may never fully understand. Ultimately, I know I need to prioritize my own happiness and the future I envision. While I'll always love my family, I also need to respect myself enough to make the choices that will lead to a fulfilling and joyful life. It's a difficult balance to strike, but I'm determined to create a life filled with love, peace, and mutual support with my partner by my side. Story 4. I've always been proud of my hair. Ever since I was little, I refused to cut it, and over time it grew into this beautiful, long, dirty blonde mane that reached down to my waist. People would often ask to touch it, and I didn't mind as long as they asked first. But one day, when I was 6 years old, someone decided that asking wasn't necessary. It started as a normal trip to the grocery store with my mom. We were getting ingredients for dinner that night, and we had almost everything we needed except for bread. Since it was on the other side of the store and I was small and quick on my feet, my mom asked me to go get it. I found the bread aisle easily enough and grabbed our usual brand. But then I saw the baguettes. I absolutely loved baguettes back then. Something about that crusty exterior just made my mouth water. I completely forgot that my mom was waiting for me and grabbed one of those too. As I was heading back, clutching both bread loaves to my chest, it happened. Someone grabbed my hair and yanked it so hard I thought it was going to be ripped right out of my scalp. The pain was shocking, and I started crying immediately. My sobs were so loud that my mom heard me from across the store. You'd think it was another kid who pulled my hair, right? Nope. It was a grown woman, probably around 40 years old, who had yanked my hair so her son could touch it. Her son looked about my age and was standing there watching, while his mother held on to my hair like it was some kind of petting zoo exhibit. My mom came running when she heard me crying. Here's how it went down. Mom, let my daughter go. Entitled mother, my child just wanted to touch her hair. She has very pretty hair. Me, she pulled on my hair. It hurts. Mom, you could have just asked. You can't just pull kids' hair. I can call the police for assault. Entitled mother, you are harassing me. All I did was let my son touch her hair. I can call the police on you for harassing me and my child. Mom, firstly, I am not harassing you. You assaulted my child. And secondly, you can call the police. You will only be making things worse for yourself. Well, the entitled mother actually did call the police. When they arrived, they took statements from both adults. I remember sitting in one of the store offices while this was happening, still sniffling and scared. The entitled mother gave this completely made-up version where I had supposedly given permission for her kid to touch my hair, and my mom had come rushing in to harass them for no reason. The police asked me for my side too, but I was too frightened and exhausted to say much. It didn't matter though, because the security cameras had caught everything. The footage clearly showed this woman grabbing and pulling my hair while her son just stood there. My mom decided to press charges against her. The entitled mother ended up getting 6 months in jail for assault, plus an additional fine for giving a false police report. From what I heard later, she lost her job over it too. The whole incident made me wary of letting anyone touch my hair for a long time after that. These days, I still have long hair, but I'm much more protective of it. It's crazy to think that some people believe they have the right to put their hands on someone else's child just because they want to. Story 5. So this experience isn't about me. It's about my friend and the awful person she unfortunately has to call mother. We'll call my friend Red, for her red hair, and her mother Cruella. I'm sure you get the reference. A bit of history: Red and I became best friends in high school and still hang out with each other on a regular basis. Since first spending time with her, I learned how awful her home life was. She didn't have any father figure, and Cruella was awful to her. She never wanted anything to do with Red, even on her birthday or Christmas or any holiday. Red had 3 older brothers Cruella also didn't care about, and they moved out of the home pretty quickly. Red had to provide food, clothes, and any other basic necessity herself, as Cruella practically told her to take care of herself. Luckily, Red moved out as soon as she was of age and moved in with her boyfriend. We'll call him Beard. She was finally able to have nice things and have someone care about her. Almost as soon as Cruella learned Red was having a better life, Cruella began calling and messaging Red. Suddenly Cruella wanted to be part of her life. Go shopping with her, go out for coffee, spend holidays with her. Cruella wanted to go over to Red and Beard's place and visit frequently. Red basically told her that it wasn't happening, and I don't blame her. Your mother ignores you for a major part of your life, and as soon as you move out and start to better your situation, she suddenly wants to be a part of your life. Screw that. And of course, Cruella starts playing the victim, wondering why her daughter hates her and treats her this way, that she just wants to be a good mom and spend some time with her. Red showed me the text messages Cruella sent her. The audacity. Fast forward a few years, and Red and Beard get engaged. Me, my younger sister, and another close friend were chosen to be the bridesmaids, with me being the maid of honor. We were all ecstatic and so happy for her. Cruella was not. Cruella did not want Red to get married, especially without her blessing. Once again, Red laughed and did what she wanted, as that was what she had learned to do. Cruella did absolutely nothing to help with the wedding. The church was picked out and recommended by Beard's parents. I went with her to go pick out a dress, shoes, veil, and my parents paid for the wedding dress as a gift to her. The flower arrangements were picked out by Red. Their wedding cake was made by Walmart, etc. I and other friends helped as much as possible with all the wedding planning. Getting closer to the wedding, Red debated on not even letting Cruella come to the wedding. A majority of friends told her not to let Cruella come, as we feared she would try to ruin the wedding or cause some sort of scene. Red did cave and invited Cruella, as she was her mother after all, but Cruella was not allowed to bring her boyfriend, some dirty shady guy who was probably the 30th man Cruella had been with. Cruella wanted to be the one to walk Red down the aisle, as Red's father wasn't in the picture. Red flat out said no, and that she would either have my father, since my family always supported Red and tried to help her out since we became friends, or Red's older brother walk her down the aisle. In the end, Red picked out her brother, though my father was willing to do so if he was asked. And a plan was hatched for the wedding. If Cruella began to make a scene, object to the marriage, or say anything to upset Red or Beard, she would be forcibly removed from the church. my father, who is a 6'2" large man, Red's older brothers, or even me myself would drag Cruella out the moment Red had enough of her. And Cruella was told that that would exactly happen if she didn't behave. Of course she was offended, but nobody cared. The day of the wedding arrives, and everybody is trying their best to make it the perfect day for Red and Beard. The bride party arrives at the church, and I'm surveying the venue to make sure everything is in place. I then spot Cruella. She's wearing a white dress and going around telling people she got engaged to her shady boyfriend. I'm not happy and I slip into the back to tell Red and Beard what's going on. They're both annoyed, but let it slide so there's no conflict. The wedding goes off without a hitch. When vows are exchanged and the priest asks if anybody objects, pretty much all eyes are on Cruella. I'm staring her down, ready to take action if one noise comes out of her. Wisely, Cruella chooses to stay quiet and the wedding continues. At the reception, things are going well, and I'm following Red around to make sure her dress is clean, makeup is okay, guests are behaving, etc. At some point during the congratulations, Cruella goes to talk to Red. I'm not quite close enough to hear the conversation, but I'm keeping an eye on them. Red seems irritated after Cruella leaves, and I ask Red if she's okay and wants Cruella removed. Red tells me it's fine, and that Cruella was just telling Red how the wedding could have been if Cruella had control of the wedding plans. I can't believe it. Not once during the whole year of planning did we hear a word of Cruella offering to help pay or set up anything. I once again ask if Red would like me to kick Cruella out, but Red assures me she can put up with it for a couple hours longer. The rest of the wedding goes fine, and to this day Red talks about how it was probably the best day of her life. Though after the wedding, Cruella throws a fit. What she's angry about this time is that she was barely in any wedding photos. So my father was the one taking all the photos, as Red and Beard couldn't afford a professional photographer, and my father's hobby is photography and great at taking and editing photos. So at a wedding, you figure that most of the pictures taken will be of the bride and groom. There are the usual few photos of the bridesmaids and bride, groomsmen and groom, the vows, the reception, etc. But mainly the bride and the groom together. Cruella was upset there were only a couple of photos with her in them. Like which, you're not supposed to be the star of the wedding, your daughter is. It is her day. Cruella is upset because everybody treated her badly at the wedding, and she was just trying to support her daughter and be part of her important day, yada yada yada. To this day, Red and Cruella are not close. Cruella keeps trying to invite her to spend time with her, and plays victim when Red doesn't want to. Red does not like Cruella's company, but does try to visit during holidays, though Red usually leaves angry. Red and Beard moved into a house together, and they didn't even tell Cruella where they moved to so she doesn't try to come by for surprise visits. Red and Beard have clearly planned that once they decide to have kids, Cruella will not be allowed in the hospital during the birthing process, and can only see the baby when Red allows her to. I cannot imagine what it's like to have a mother like Cruella. I've encouraged Red to cut Cruella out of her life completely, but Red is nice enough to still occasionally see her, which is more than Cruella deserves. Cruella is a master of treating people badly and then playing the victim. Red and I find it very ironic that my family has treated Red like a daughter despite our cultural differences. Cruella is openly racist, and I and my family are Hispanic and Chinese. It drove Cruella practically insane when she found out that Red and I were best friends. Red told me Cruella almost didn't go to the wedding because me and my family would be there, and that I and my sister were bridesmaids. My family jokingly calls Red our adopted white child, and she's always welcome in our family. Story 6. I just got back home after being away for about 5 days, staying with my partner and his family. Those were the best 5 days I've had in a long time. While I was there, my mother threatened to come to my partner's house to get me. I explained over text why I hadn't been home, since I tend to get emotional and struggle to communicate verbally when I'm upset. I told her that I wasn't criticizing her, but I needed space and time to recover. I asked if she could refrain from getting angry and instead hold space to hear me out. In response, I received harsh messages. She called me names like coward, bad daughter, and entitled. Unfortunately, those were the more polite things she said. When I got home, my mother immediately started an argument, calling me a coward and bringing up old issues which I've detailed in previous posts. As soon as I told her I was moving out, her tone softened. She pleaded with me, saying she didn't want me to leave because I'm all she has. She asked for another chance, comparing it to how I've given my boyfriend chances before. If you can give him another chance, why can't you give me one? After all, I gave birth to you, she said. The difference is that in my relationship with my boyfriend, we broke up because of her and the stress her influence put on us. Her constant demands wore down our mental health. But when I addressed issues in my relationship, he listened, changed, and grew. I've been asking my mother to change and grow for about 8 years now. She makes an effort for a week, then reverts to old habits. During our argument, she accused me of wanting to control her and make her bow down to me. I explained that I don't want to change her. I want her to want to improve herself. But deep down, I knew she wouldn't. She argued that I should dismiss her hurtful insults as mere venting and claimed I was too sensitive. Over time, I've realized I'm not overly sensitive, I'm just a normal person recognizing mistreatment. It's natural for a child to take their mother's words seriously, especially when that mother is a single parent who has been involved in every aspect of your life and instilled fear in you. Of course, I internalized her words, especially with the intense emotions she expressed. Eventually, she started crying, saying she couldn't bear for me to leave because I'm her only child, although my siblings, who are actually my cousins, have been raised by us since they were babies. She said she needed my support and promised to change. Hearing her words made me feel uneasy because it seemed like her love and care only surfaced when she feared losing me. I hate to admit it, but I thought she seemed desperate and insincere. She even said I would regret leaving and would cause irreparable harm to the family. I rolled my eyes and began packing, unmoved by her apologies, which felt hollow. Then, my grandfather, who is seriously ill with cancer and recently had hip surgery, came out of his room. I hadn't realized he was home. He begged me not to go. He got down on his knees, which he should not have done in his condition, and sobbed. I've never seen him cry before. He scolded my mother, telling her to stop mistreating me and using hurtful language. He pleaded with me to stay, saying I'm his world. Unlike my mother's behavior, my grandfather's reaction didn't feel manipulative. I saw it as the genuine love of a grandfather who helped raise me when my father wasn't around. We've always been incredibly close, and he's been a father figure to me in every way. His actions made me angrier at my mother. If she had treated me better, I wouldn't feel compelled to leave, and we wouldn't be in this situation. I decided to stay, but only for him. I made it clear to my family that I'm staying solely for my grandfather and my siblings. When he eventually goes back to his home country, I will move out. I also told them I'll spend more time with my partner and will not engage in family matters beyond what directly concerns my grandfather and siblings. Despite my decision, I can't help but feel like my mother somehow won in this situation. It's frustrating because staying feels like a concession, even though I know my reasons are valid and rooted in love for my grandfather and siblings. I've drawn a line in the sand and set boundaries, but part of me wonders if I could have handled it differently. Now, I find myself asking, what do I do next? This is all new territory for me. I'm so used to enduring and staying quiet, but now I'm standing up for myself. I've stopped believing the harmful things my mother says, but navigating this new dynamic is overwhelming. How do I make the situation more bearable until I'm ready to leave? How do I work on myself during this time? I also worry about how to prepare for the moment my grandfather leaves. I don't know how long he'll stay here, and the thought of leaving him behind tears me apart. He's been my rock, and his health is so fragile right now. How do I stay strong for him while also staying committed to my plans? I'm trying to remind myself that I've already made progress by taking steps to assert my independence and setting clear boundaries. But the guilt and frustration still linger. I don't want to keep feeling like my mother has control over me, even indirectly. How do I stop these feelings of defeat? What are some practical ways to prepare myself emotionally and mentally for the next chapter? Am I handling this the right way? I'm open to any tips or advice, especially from those who've been through similar situations. I want to stay strong for my grandfather, keep my promises to myself, and grow into the person I know I can be. Any insights or suggestions are deeply appreciated. Thank you for taking the time to read and offer your thoughts.